So the human skeletal system. So we don't get the bigger issues here in this particular area. Just we need to know the names of the bones and the visuals of the bones in this particular area. So let's go through this. Human skeletal system include that the 206 bones of the human being and some cartilages in coming in the part of a human skeletal system. The bone has very hard matrix due to the presence of calcium salts. What do you say the calcium salt? The major calcium salt is going to be calcium phosphate here. What do you say? Calcium hydroxyapatite. Ca10PO4 taken 6 OH taken twice. Okay. So the calcium hydroxyapatite is a major component here. Then cartilage, which is present in the human being, that in some parts of the body will have the cartilage also. That is slightly pliable matrix. When in comparison with the bone, it has a pliable matrix, flexible matrix, we can say, due to the presence of chondroitin sulfate. The major component is going to be chondroitin 4 sulfate there. Major component of the bone, that calcium phosphate, the chemical name calcium hydroxyapatite. Major component of the cartilage is going to be chondroitin 4 sulfate. Then let's come to the human skeletal system. We classify it as two axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton include 80 bones here in the axial skeleton. Then appendicular skeleton include 126 bones. Axial skeleton includes skull, vertebral column, sternum, and ribs. Appendicular skeleton include the forelimbs, bones of the forelimbs, bones of the hind limbs, and pectoral girdle, pelvic girdle. Okay, so that need to remember which part belongs to the axial skeleton and which are going to be with the appendicular skeletons. Just see the photograph, the screen on the screen. You can see here the blue one is going to be the axial skeleton. Here, in case the limbs and girdles are going to be that belongs to the appendicular skeleton. Let's see one after another. The first of all, we'll go with the axial skeleton. In the axial skeleton, the very famous and regular the photograph, the image we are going to get in examination, that we need to get some idea on this particular bones here. So the skull, the first one is the skull in the axial skeleton. That skull includes 29 bones. The number is also going to play a vital role in the case. That skull, 29 bones, the cranial bones, facial bones, hyoid bone, ear ossicle. We can classify like this. The cranial bones, when it comes, frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital, sphenoid, ethmoid. Then let us locate one after another. This is the frontal bone, just immediately above the orbit. You can see the frontal bone and parietal bone, then temporal bone, then occipital bone, frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital bone. Then sphenoid and ethmoid you'll find inside, but a little bit visible. You can see here that this is ethmoid. Sphenoid will start from this side and will go on that the other side. Okay, so I will show that particular issues in some medical book. The facial bones. Facial bones include nasal, maxillae, zygomatics, lacrimals, palatine, inferior nasal, mandible, omer. In that nasals, maxillae, zygomatics, lacrimals, palatine, inferior nasal, the two each, and we'll find the mandible one and omer one. The similar way, the bones of cranium, that frontal is one, and ethmoid and sphenoid also one, along with the occipital. We'll find the lateral sides a pair of parietal and a pair of temporal bones here. So then you can see hyoid bone also here, that we got this question earlier. So this labeling is must here. No need to draw, just need to look forward this particular diagram and their labelings here. Next, the skull articulates with the first vertebrae of the vertebral column with the help of two occipital condyles. The two occipital condyles you can see as the protrusions of the occipital bone. The two occipital condyles, presence of two occipital condyles that human being, mammals, we say dicondylic skull. In case of reptiles, you'll find only one occipital condyle. That they can be called as monocondylic skull. Then coming to the second one, vertebral column. The vertebral column include the 26 vertebrae here, which are going to be classified based on their location, like cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, lumbar, and sacral coccygeal vertebrae. Number about 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar vertebrae, and 1 fused sacral vertebrae. The sacral vertebrae are fused, and now you can see only one. The coccygeal vertebrae, they are also one and fused. Okay, so then in the vertebral column, that things to be recognized, to be remembered, the vertebrae has a central hollow portion. You can see in the diagram. This is called neural canal, through which the spinal cord is going to move. That the brain is protected by cranium. The spinal cord is protected by vertebral column. Basic issue, but we need to remember that brain and spinal cord are belongs to nervous system. Skull and vertebral column are belongs to skeletal system. These people are meant for protection, skull and vertebral column, to protect what? Nervous system, brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord pass through this particular vertebrae. We say that particular canal as neural canal. And the number of cervical vertebrae is about 7 in almost all mammals, 7 with little exceptions, like some mammals are having 9, then some are having 8. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord, supports the head, and serves as a point of attachment for the ribs and musculature of the back. And the one more here, that sternum. The sternum is a breastbone, we say. It includes one flat bone on the ventral midline of the thorax. So basically, then the sternum will find 3 portions: manubrium, body, and xiphoid process. You can see on the top of the sternum, the manubrium, and then you can see manubrium and body and xiphoid process. Okay. So in this particular, the sternum is giving support to the ribs to attach to the vertebral column. The sternum is giving support to the ribs. Okay, no problem, no problem. Wait, I am putting the charging here. I'll ask some charge. Okay, then what we said about the sternum, it contains 3 portions: manubrium, body, and xiphoid process. It is giving support to the attachment of the ribs. On the dorsal side, ribs are going to connect it towards the vertebral column, and the ventral side, they connect it to the sternum. We'll look forward that particular ribs. You can see the sternum here. So that ribs are of 3 types. 12 pairs of ribs are present. The true ribs, that first of all, we need to remember all the ribs are connected to the vertebral column, no doubt about that. Now, that these particular 3 types based upon the attachment of the ribs towards the ventral side, towards the centrum only, that sternum only. So the first 7 pairs of ribs are called true ribs because that 7 will come and attach to this particular sternum. And vertebrochondral ribs, 8th, 9th, 10th. You see the numbers? 8, 9, and 10 are going to attach towards the 7th sternum, that 7th rib. That's why we say they are called as vertebrochondral ribs or false ribs. And 11 and 12 are not going to be connected to anyone. That we say floating ribs. 11 and 12 are called as floating ribs based on the attachment of the ribs towards the ventral side. That dorsal side, we have another classification, but not in our syllabus. Dorsal side, the vertebral column is having capitulum and tuberculum, and double-headed ribs we have. That we don't have that classification. Just we need to remember that the classification of the ribs is given in our textbook based on the attachment of the ribs towards the sternum side. That means on the ventral side. The 7 pairs completely attached to the sternum, we say true ribs, and 8, 9, 10 attached to the particular 7th one, we say false ribs, and 11 and 12 are going to be free. floating ribs, we can see. Here you can see a little bit clear that the blue color, that attachment of the ribs towards the sternum is possible by the costal cartilage. That hyaline cartilage, we say that as hyaline cartilage, here called costal cartilage. Then each rib has two articulation surfaces, as we said now, that on dorsal end. Dorsal end, the articulation is going to be bicephalic. That two heads can be seen over, capitulum and tuberculum, we can name them as. The true ribs are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventrally connected to the sternum with the help of hyaline cartilage. We said that in our first year, that means in structural organization chapter, it has a costal cartilage. That hyaline cartilage it is made up of. The false ribs do not articulate with the sternum, but they join with the seventh rib with the help of hyaline cartilage. The floating ribs are not connected ventrally here. The floating ribs, you can see them, they are free. The 11 and 12 are free. And appendicular skeleton. Appendicular skeleton, this is a clavicle. Okay, let's see what we are going to see actually that we need to go. The bones of forelimbs we are going, that in appendicular skeleton, the bones of forelimbs, there are about 60 bones we'll find in the forelimbs, which include humerus, radius and ulna, carpal, metacarpal and phalanges. Humerus, radius and ulna, carpal, metacarpal, phalanges. Just to follow. These are diagrammatic questions here. Humerus, radius and ulna, carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. So on one side we'll find 30 and two hands what we have that total it will come for 60. Similar way the bones of the hind limbs, whatever, that it contain femur, thigh bone, that tibia and fibula, one each, and tarsals, all these numbers. You just need to make your own notes here to make to understand. This means we are going to get math the following with the numbers even from the beginning till here. While reading, just visualizing that particular bone and remembering the number of bones is very important here. We can only get two types of questions. What is this? They'll ask. Manubrium belongs to sternum. Likewise, occipital bone belongs to cranium, particularly skull, particularly cranium. So on that way we are going to get questions here. The femur, thigh bone, patella, kneecap. We say that patella you can see here between the femur and tibia and fibula. We'll find the kneecap. And tarsals, ankle bones, they are about 7, and metatarsals 5, phalanges, the digits are going to be 14. Then girdles, need to go with the pectoral girdle and pelvic girdle. First of all, pectoral girdle, that 4 bones are there in case of pectoral girdle, the 2 each, that 2 sides will find the pectoral girdle. The major bones of the pectoral girdle are clavicle. The clavicle we say collarbone. The 2 clavicles you can see here, and the bigger one is the scapula. The scapula, you can feel that on shoulder blade we use it to say the shoulder blade. The scapula is having a cavity. What do you say? The cavity has glenoid cavity into which the head of the humerus is going to fix and form the ball and socket joint. So to be remembered, scapula and clavicular belongs to pectoral girdle. A large triangular flat bone situated in the dorsal part of the thorax between the 2nd and 7th ribs is said to be scapula. Description wise question. Scapula is having a slight elevated edge. That particular ridge we say spine, a ridge which projects as a flat expanded process we call acromion process. That is said to be acromion. The clavicle is going to be articulate with that acromion process. And below the acromion process, we'll find a cavity called glenoid cavity, which articulates with the head of the humerus to form the shoulder joint. The similar way, the pelvic girdle that we need to go through, the pelvic girdle. Here, the pelvic girdle, that 2 into 1, 2 bones, 2 pelvic girdles here. The formed of 2 coxal bones. Pelvic girdle, they have another name that is called coxal bone. That each half of the coxal bone here, that this is called a coxal bone and this is called a coxal bone. Ilium, ischium, pubis. The completely jointed, that's why we call coxal bone. Okay, so there are three bones here: ilium, ischium, and pubis. Let us try to locate them. This is the ilium, and this is the ischium, and these two bones are pubic bones. You may find that cartilage here, the fibrous cartilage. We call this as pubic symphysis, if you remember. That is fibrous cartilage. So we get separated here the two coxal bones. Each coxal bone is having ilium and ischium, then pubis. Where ilium, ischium, pubis are connected each other, there you'll find a particular cavity called acetobulum. That acetobulum is making the head of the femurus is going to fix in the socket called acetobulum. That is to form the ball and socket joint again. That two halves of the pelvic girdle meet ventrally to form pubic symphysis that contain fibrous cartilage, as we said now. Now moving on to the joints. So we have the Hughes classification in our textbook here. We say that as synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, diarthrosis. The technical names we have. What is synarthrosis? Completely immovable joints, we say synarthrosis. The best example itself, the cranial bones. Frontal and parietal, parietal and temporal, they're completely fused each other. What do you say? Synarthrosis. Amphiarthrosis. Slightly movable joints are called amphiarthrosis. Then synovial joints are said to be diarthrosis. Flexible moving joints, we say diarthrosis. Let us see one after another. That you can see the suture here. Suture, that means attachment between the frontal and parietal, parietal and temporal, temporal and occipital. What do you say? The cranial bones, all the cranial bones. This is frontal, this is parietal, temporal, occipital. You see, between all the bones, you'll find some lines, their attachment that indicate. We say they are sutures. They are completely immovable joints. We call them as sutures. So that's it. Next, we'll take one more example that cartilaginous joints. We say they are slightly movable joint. They join together with the help of cartilages. Joints between the adjacent vertebrae. Simply we say intervertebral discs. You can see between every vertebrae will find some discs we call intervertebral discs. They are imperfectly movable joints. Next, synovial joints. Functionally, we say them as diarthrial diarthrosis. We say them as diarthrosis. And structurally, what do you call that? Synovial joints. They are movable joints characterized by the presence of fluid-filled synovial cavity between articulating surfaces of the two bones. Let us see here. You can see two bones in the diagram. From the periosteum of one bone to the periosteum of the another bone, the irregular dense fibrous connective tissue sheath is getting raised over, which is connecting the two bones. And you'll find a small space between the two bones, isn't it? That we call synovial space. And the green one, you see here, this is the green one. In the tip of the bones, articular cartilage, you'll find that cartilage is hyaline cartilage, the postal cartilage. Sorry, articular cartilage, we say. The type of cartilage is going to be hyaline cartilage. And some space, the space called synovial space, filled with synovial fluid. Let's see some joints here. These are going to be the following questions. The ball and socket joint that let me locate, just follow my arrow mark cursor. The ball and socket joint between the glenoid cavity of the pectoral girdle and head of the humerus. Or we say acetobulum of the pelvic girdle and head of femur. We say that as ball and socket. In other terms, shoulder joint, hip joint. Hinge joint. Hinge joint you'll find between that humerus and radius ulna. In the case of forelimbs, humerus and radius ulna, generally called as elbow joint. Then between the femur and tibiofibula, that knee joint, that both knee joint and elbow joint can be considered as hinge joint. Pivotal joint, joint between the atlas and axis, that first vertebrae and second vertebrae, we say pivotal joint. Joint between the carpals can be called as gliding joint. pivotal joint also you can see between the radius and ulna. So gliding joint is there between the carpals. And finally the saddle joint between the carpal and metacarpal of the thumb, particularly in the thumb region, carpal and metacarpal of the thumb. So closing here, the disorders of the muscular and skeletal structures, the disorders of the muscular and skeletal system when it comes. Tetany is a rapid spasm in the muscle due to the low calcium in body fluid. We call tetany. Instead of because of the low calcium, that we say the muscle contraction doesn't occur properly. We say that as spasm. Then the very famous myasthenia gravis. As you may have seen this question in previous question papers also, that autoimmune disorder it is. Where it affects the neuromuscular junction, leading to fatigue, weakening and paralysis of the skeletal muscles. That's very important to remember that it's an autoimmune disorder, myasthenia gravis. And muscular dystrophy, the progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscles, mostly due to a genetic disorder we call muscular dystrophy. You may have remembered over this, we say it as Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a genetic disorder. By the age of 10, that particular one after another, the complete muscles are going to lose their strength, and by age of 15 to 20, the person even may die. So we say this is a genetic disorder. Let's remind the previous one. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder, and Duchenne muscular dystrophy is DMD, is a muscular dystrophy, is a genetic disorder. This is X-linked recessive genetic disorder, we can say. X-linked recessive genetic disorder, to be remembered. And rheumatoid arthritis. Arthritis is a very general disease here. Particularly, we are talking about rheumatoid arthritis. First of all, what is arthritis? Inflammation of joints. You can see the joints reddening. Inflammation include 4 properties: color, dolor, rubor, tumor. That means color, that means heat. That rubor, reddening, you can see. Then dolor, pain, we can see. That tumor, swelling. So 4 properties. Any inflammation is having 4 properties. Generation of the heat called color. The raising pain called dolor. Then swelling said to be tumor. Reddening in the particular area is called as rubor. So inflammation, anywhere it happens, the 4 properties can be seen over. You can see between the joints, inflammation between the joints is called arthritis. So the inflammation of joints due to the accumulation of the uric acid crystals is called gouty arthritis. So gout disorder, you can see on the photograph. The osteoporosis. As we know, the calcium phosphate is a major component of the bone. In the particular bone, the calcium levels are going to be dropped over. The calcium levels are dropping down of the calcium levels by the age. That's why we say, use it to say age-related disorder it is going to be. The characterized by the decreased bone mass and increased chance of fractures. Bone mass, what we mean, the calcium. And the very important here, the decreased level of estrogen is a common cause. We should not use logics here, that estrogen is having this particular function also. Okay, so that as I observed that so many cases when when this question came in examination, so how estrogen, sir? Why you get this kind of question? Because you learn the estrogen as development of secondary sexual characters in female. Okay, but you add this function also, then we're not going to be confused in examination. That means estrogen is helpful for the maintenance of calcium in the bone. That is the function. So during menopause stages, that when estrogen levels are decreased, that leads to osteoporosis also. One of the symptom we can say that leads to osteoporosis also. So in the skeletal system, particularly when it comes to skeletal system, That one, you need to recognize the very important thing here that you need to remember. The skeletal system, the bones are going to be very important. Recognition of the bones is very important in this particular case. Okay, so that's why I request you to see that particular bones. I'll show the bones in here, the skeletal system, the bones of the skeletal system. I'm trying to show you that it will take a little bit time. Just give me some time. Within 10, that means I have to go to that particular chapter. Let me go to that particular chapter. It's a medical book which you are going to read soon. Here the visuals are very good. That's why I want to show these particular visuals. Once we see the visuals, it will be helpful for us to recognize the parts here. That means the total skeletal system. We have two types of questions. One, that the kind of questions we say about the number. So what we have to do with that number? We need to list out all the numbers here. Total numbers of the skeletal system. We need to list out. Then the remaining one. Remaining, what I mean, what is what type of question? So you see this picture gives a complete number issues here, which matches with our NCRT. If you want, you can take the screenshot of this particular. The axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton, the list of axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. You can take the screenshot. You may have. Okay, so then let us see once. We'll take a short look on this particular area. Axial skeleton include the cranium, 8 bones, facial bones are about 14, hyoid bone 1, auditory ossicles like malleus, incus, stapes, 3 on each side. You may know that they are belongs to the ear ossicles we can see. Okay. Then vertebral column is about 26 bones, sternum is 1, and ribs are about 24, 12 pairs of ribs are present. Total number of bones will come for 80 bones here in axial skeleton. Skull, vertebral column, sternum, and ribs, the major one. In case of appendicular skeleton, pectoral girdle, clavicle 2, scapula 2. Then the upper limbs include humerus, radius ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. Okay, in the same way, the hind limbs include femur, patella, tibia, fibula, tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges. Then along with that, girdles. What to be remembered in the girdle? Pectoral girdle include clavicle and scapula. If you remember one more, acromion process. Pelvic girdle include the two coxal bones or hip bones or pelvic bones we say, which include ilium, ischium, pubis. Just it's a memory game. Which bone belongs to what? They'll ask over. So let us see here the sternum original position. You can see here, this is the sternum. And here you can see attachment of the ribs also very clear. Ribs are attached to the vertebral column and dorsal side. On the ventral side, the ribs are attached to the sternum. As we know, the 7 pairs of ribs are going to attach to the sternum. And 8, 9, 10, we said the false ribs, that because they are attached to the 7th one. 11 and 12 are said to be floating ribs. The original position, you can see like this. Running out of time. Okay, we are closing. So in the same way, we have to see the skull. I opened this for to show the skull issues only. So let us see here the frontal bone. Frontal bone, you can see much clear. The beauty of this particular book is the color, whatever maintained, they maintained all over the time the same color they maintain. Okay, so I want to show the sphenoid bone first of all to you. Sphenoid and ethmoid bone. Let us recognize that particular sphenoid bone. Whatever the diagram comes here, the green one is going to be sphenoid bone in all angles. Okay, so let's try to locate the frontal bone first of all in this particular angle. Then after I'll go with the remaining bones. Yeah, there in this area we can see all the bones clearly. Frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, occipital bone. Okay, so then along with that you can see that sphenoid bone. This is the sphenoid bone, and ethmoid bone, the red color one, ethmoid bone. This is maxilla, the yellow one, and the lower you can see mandibles. Here, these are the sutures, even you can see. We have some name for the sutures that was mentioned in state textbook. Coronal suture, sagittal suture, lambdoidal suture likewise. All sutures are example for synarthrosis. Frontal, parietal, you can see clearly. And let me show you the occipital condyles to you. This is a sphenoid bone, frontal, parietal. Sphenoid bone is called keystone bone. Why? That sphenoid bone is almost connected to any bone. Now, in this diagram, I am going to show the occipital condyles to you. The two occipital condyles are present. Just follow the cursor. These two are the occipital condyles. That's why we say the dicondylic skull, ours is. Foramen magnum, the opening of the skull into the vertebral column, into which the extension of the brain, spinal cord. Yeah, to show this only we open. That sphenoid bone. You see that sphenoid bone is having connection with maxilla, facial, palatine, temporal, all bones, almost all bones of the cranium are connected to the sphenoid. That's why we say that sphenoid bone here in this diagram you can see clearly. It is the frontal bone and these are the temporal bone, occipital bone, all they are connected to this one. This is complete sphenoid bone. Okay. So this sphenoid bone is, that's why we say the keystone bone. Not much more information required more than this for us. This is the diagram. And you can see the foramen magnum also clearly here. Whatever given in capital letters that we require at present now. Like crista galli, olfactory foramina, cribriform plate, not much more. When you follow the Akash, you require these particular diagrams. You may have recognized over. All these particular diagrams of your Akash textbook are taken from here only. Tortora Medical Physiology. I am the part at the time. Same diagrams you can see in your Akash book in black and white. They are originally colored photographs. If you want, you can take screenshot. This is a diagram. You can see sphenoid bone, which explains about the keystone bone. This is a full picture of sphenoid, having the connection with any other bone of the skull, cranial region. That's why we say that as keystone bone. So this is a ethmoid bone. That location you can see on the right side, and when you separate, it will be like this: the crista galli, cribriform plate. So only the problem will come with the two bones, sphenoid and ethmoid, because our text is not representing them clearly. Okay, so in the same way, just we'll see the mandibles here, that you can see mandibles, and here the position of the sphenoid bone you can see behind the orbits. So remaining is not much necessary for us, that just showing the indication what you're going to learn in the medicine. It's going to be huge. What you learned is very less. Here you can see the vertebral, intervertebral disc. Between the vertebrae, intervertebral disc are present. This is the original location of the hyoid bone. Hyoid bone. Okay, that's enough for us, I think so. That's enough for us. These are the bones. This is the original position of the vertebral column, and this is the intervertebral discs you can see. Okay, so this is about the skeletal system of the human being, the skeletal system. Here you can see that pivotal joint. This is the axis one, and these two, whatever the ring-like bone, you can see that is atlas. So that axis projection into the atlas you can see. So the pivotal process, we use it to say that as, and these are the facets for occipital condyle. You may have seen our occipital condyles in the occipital bone of the cranium. So that for that condyles, these two are the facets. That you have another joint in our textbook, condyloid joint, isn't it? This one, that between the atlas and axis, whatever the joint is present, pivotal joint, which makes the movement of the head in 180 degrees angle. And this language is must for us, that cervical C1 to C7, that means cervical vertebrae from C1 to C7. Thoracic is termed as T1 to T12. On the same way, this language will be helpful for us in coming future. Okay, so that's enough. That's enough. For now, I am closing this. And today itself, I'll send the brain PDF here near neural control and coordination. We are going to start from tomorrow. Then neural control and coordination. For that, we need some basic information like forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. In the tree, you people need to recognize which part is belongs to which part of the brain, forebrain or midbrain or hindbrain. When I ask over, cerebellum belongs to that hindbrain. Likewise, optic lobes are belongs to midbrain. So that I am sending the total PDF to you in our WhatsApp group. I am going to put that. Just take at least this particular area, forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, which are called as prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and metencephalon. Forebrain or prosencephalon include that olfactory lobe, cerebral hemispheres, and diencephalon. Midbrain include optic lobes and crura cerebri. Hindbrain include cerebellum, pons feruli, and medulla oblongata. We analyze each and every part tomorrow, but at the best to be there, learn that particular area, learn just that particular area. And in that notes itself, we'll find sympathetic and parasympathetic. I don't think so that is necessary for us. Just look forward only to the brain portion only brain portion. That PDF of my notes I'm sending to you. Just take a look on that particular. Tomorrow we begin neural control and coordination. Okay. Thank you.